Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast, where you learn how to extract your business and personal deep wealth. I'm your host, Jeffrey Feldberg. This podcast is brought to you by Deep Wealth and the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience. When it comes to your business deep wealth, your exit or liquidity event is the most important financial decision of your life. But unfortunately, up to 90% of liquidity events fail. Think about all that time and your hard-earned money wasted. Of the quote-unquote successful liquidity events, most business owners leave 50% to over 100% of the deal value in the buyer's pocket and don't even know it. I should know. I said no to a seven-figure offer and yes to mastering the art and the science of a liquidity event. 2 years later, I said yes to a different buyer with a 9-figure deal. Are you thinking about an exit or liquidity event? Don't become a statistic and make the fatal mistake of believing the skills that built your business are the same ones to sell it. After all, how can you master something you've never done before? Let the 90-Day Deep Wealth Experience and the 9-step roadmap of preparation help you capture the best deal instead of any deal. At the end of this episode, take a moment and hear from business owners like you who went through the Deep Wealth Experience. Jason Helfenbaum and his company, Click Knowledge, create customized training and knowledge management solutions that addresses operational issues and opportunities for a wide variety of clients across numerous verticals, locations, and sizes. In addition to working with large enterprise clients, Jason works with the small and medium-sized business market with a focus on creating virtual owner manuals that enable businesses to scale, grow, and exit. Welcome to the Deep Wealth Podcast. And if you remember our guest from the very early episode, he rocked our community when he's all about KPIs, the 4 points of clarity. While he's back. Jason is back in the house. And today we're talking about scalability and business continuity. And hey, do you want to scale? What a rhetorical question. Of course you do. But let's put a pin in that. Jason, welcome back to the Deep Wealth Podcast. An absolute pleasure to have you with us. And Jason, for our new listeners, our new community members, because since we last spoke, we have just been growing by leaps and bounds. There's always a story behind the story. So Jason, what's your story? What got you from where you are to where you are today?
First of all, Jeff, thanks so much for having me on again. It was such a pleasure last time, and I really appreciate it. So let me explain first what I do, and then maybe I'll explain how I got there.
Love it.
So the way one of my clients put it, to really oversimplify it, is I McDonaldize businesses.
Okay.
What does that mean? So, I could be a full-fledged vegetarian and hire a bunch of high school dropouts and buy McDonald's franchise, and I could be very profitable. Because even though McDonald's is a restaurant, more than being a restaurant, it's a system.
Okay.
And so what I do with businesses is I document every single aspect of that business, not just standard operating procedures, but everything that's required to grow and scale and exit that business. And that enables business owners to actually spend less time in the business and allow the business to grow more organically without them having to be lost in the weeds. So that's just to give you the context of who I am, what I do, and stuff like that. And so how did I get to where I am? It's kind of a long, twisted tale, but I'll just put it this way. When I was in elementary school and whatnot, I was constantly getting feedback on my report cards that said, Jason is a bright student who's not living up to his potential.
Wow. Talk about a knock in your sales at such a young age.
Well, I think they had good intentions, but I think the frustrating thing for me is that there's no guidance or path of how to attain that. And so initially I got into a lot of training and education in and around corporate development and Fortune 500s and stuff like that, because I think a lot of employees feel that way. But upon further reflection, I think there's a lot of owners that feel that way as well. They kind of feel like they're the lone wolf, they're rogue, they have to do it all by themselves. They just want someone, just tell me what to do. And often they have good counsel, such as accountants and lawyers and whatnot, that can guide them.
Yes.
But they sort of want to scale, they want to grow, they want to get to that next level, and they have no idea of how to do that. So I love working with that, because what it allows me to do is not just unlock their potential and the company's potential, but the people who work with them. And so everyone really is able to grow, everyone's able to excel, and it's just hopefully one big happy family.
Fantastic. And so you got into that, and I know in the last episode, and we can put a link in the show notes for our listeners, they can reference that. I mean, Jason, you've been doing some amazing things, and most business owners, when you mention documentation, their eyes glaze over, and who wants to do that? It's so boring, it's so time consuming, but you can take their pain away. And for the benefits of our new community members, how are you doing that? How are you taking their pain away on the documentation side? What are you doing with that?
So really what the mantra I tell people is tell me once, then never tell anyone ever again. And really what I'm trying to do, let's sort of forget about documentation. Let's focus more on input and outcome.
Okay.
Really what I am trying to do is get people to right size their tasks and their responsibilities. And I'll expand upon this as necessary, but what I'm trying to get people to do is focus not on what they could do, but what they should do. And so by documenting it, it's locked down. It's not just in your head. It's available, and it is put in a succinct way that people can just not know it, but take action on that.
And so for our listeners who are hearing this saying, okay, Jason, it sounds good at very high level, practically speaking, what does that mean? What's involved?
Sure. So I think maybe to give examples is, for example, if you have a sales team and you have a sales process, but it's not really documented and people can't really understand it, and that sales team cannot really take action against that, nor can they be held accountable. So by basically creating a sales training program and or best practices, we're establishing metrics, we're establishing best practices, and we're setting people up for success as opposed to asking them to be mind readers.
And so, Jason, when you're going down that path with what you're sharing, tell me if I'm on base or off base with this, because as I'm hearing you talk, it goes back to how we started this episode. I'll mention the two terms, scalability and business continuity. And so with what you're doing, share with us how that makes a difference to scale and to have business continuity. If someone gets abducted by aliens or something happens, heaven forbid, the business continues.
Yeah, sure. So I'll answer that a few different ways. I think as Gerber talks about the E-myth is a lot of times when people think they're creating a business, what they're really doing is creating a job for themselves. And the challenge really is they're not able to scale. They're somehow supposed to get business, market it, deal with the customers, produce the product, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think on a small level, we all understand that we can't do everything. But I think myself included, as business owners, we're very guilty of, like I said, the could versus the should. We take on more things than we should. And if you really want to scale, you have to set up systems so that you are handing off things to other people to do and hold them accountable. And you can't just sort of just say, okay, tomorrow you're responsible for that. You have to have systems in place that enable them to graduate to that. And so all of us as owners have these visions, these dreams, and whether we want to use that word or not, scalability is part of that. But you also take into account continuity in the sense that I want to attain that, but I need to keep my foot on the gas and get there. And so what I like doing with businesses is understand where are you now and where do you want to go, and how can we use systems to help you achieve that.
And so when it comes to systems, Jason, and I really like what I'm hearing here with Deep Wealth, when we're out there speaking with business owners and we're talking about how they can, number one, grow the business, and at the same time, really effortlessly, while they're growing the business, increase enterprise value. And while they're doing those two things, they're planning for a post-exit life that's filled with both success, but also fulfillment. One without the other is really failure. But when I ask this question to most business owners, I'll say, hey, Jeffrey or Jane, does your business run without you? More times than not, there's a hem, there's a ha, well, let me explain. And the short answer is always no. And so for our listeners who are following us, but they're saying, you know what, Jason, that sounds really good, but my business doesn't run without me. I don't even know where to begin, what to start. It sounds like it's probably going to be a lot of dollar signs to be able to do this. What would you tell that listener?
Well, I would say the number one thing I hear from people who want to work with me but don't want to work with me is their response is, I don't need you. I just need 4 of me. And my response back is, I don't know how to clone you, but it's not black or white. It's not all or nothing. Let me ask you a question. What if we could hire 4 people and each person could do 10 to 15% of what you do? We can't do 100%, but what if we get that number from 100 down to 30 or 20? What would that be worth to you? And what could you do with that time? And what could you do with that effort and that drive? Where I'm going to go with this for a second is a lot of times business owners are focused on operations, which makes sense, the day-to-day. But if they want to scale, if they want to exit, regardless if they talk to me or not, what they really need to do is transition from operations to strategy. The only way they can do that is if they have other people taking care of the operations.
And to the business owner who says, yeah, that's fine, but there's always a but. Jason, no one is as good as me. So you're going to put someone in and maybe they'll be 40% effective, 20% effective, 60% effective. The company's going to suffer, right? I don't know if I want to take that risk or go out in that direction. How would you address that? What do you see? What do you say?
Well, there's that adage, good enough is good enough. And to say that carte blanche is a big mistake. But for example, I know business owners that do payroll because no one can do payroll as well as them. Okay, that may be the case, but is that something that could take a hit? One organization I'm talking to right now is a not-for-profit. I can't go into details, but right now the executive director is basically doing everything. What the board wants the executive director to focus on is donor relations, because that's what she's good at, and that's what brings the things that keeps the business or the organization running, I should say. Right? And so, yes, she excels at doing everything, but really what she needs to do is focus in on one or two things that are key to the business. And that's what she needs to do. And so I'd say similarly with business owners, you're basically going to have one of two flavors of people. You either have a Renaissance person who can do it all and they can't, or you're going to have someone who has strengths and weaknesses and recognizes it. So they may be very good at product development, but they're not very good at sales or marketing. And they recognize they need to have someone else. But if you have someone who's really good at everything and is that Renaissance person, do have to give certain things up. If they're really good at product development and sales, they're probably going to have to pick one, right? Or if they decide to take on both, then I would say, okay, fine. You don't have to do every single task that's required. What can you delegate? And I think we talked about that last time is I always tell people whenever there's a task to be done, ask yourself, can I automate this or can I delegate it? If I can't, then is this something I should take on? Yes or no?
And so, Jason, as you're talking about this, I mean, you're doing this day in, day out. You've refined this system. You've got it down pat. You do it with your eyes closed. For someone, an organization, a business owner, large corporate entity who's thinking about doing this, this is something new. This is a new skill that they haven't done and they certainly haven't mastered. So when a business comes to you, Jason, what does that look like in terms of what's your secret sauce? What are you putting them through in terms of your process? What's involved? How long does that take?
First of all, thank you. Hopefully I don't do this with my eyes closed. I hopefully do it with my eyes wide open. In this sense, I think it would be very dangerous for myself or anyone to say, been there, done that. Because every business is nuanced. Every business is different. My first step really is to listen carefully and understand the business owner, the drivers and stuff like that. As far as the process of working with us, the first thing we like to do is offer a complimentary consult. And you sort of happen to hit on the two words I like to talk about, which is continuity and scalability. And we like to look at a business and understand what is proverbially keeping those lights on, what's threatening that, what are growth opportunities, and how can we scale that out? And so what I do is I offer an hour-long session where I ask a whole bunch of different questions. And my intention is, first of all, is to earn trust because I understand this is their prized possession. And this is not something they're just going to give forthcoming information to a total stranger. And I like to ask a bunch of questions, nothing to do with things like revenue or EBITDA or anything to do with a balance sheet. And I just go down different rabbit holes based on the responses. And my intention is twofold. Is to come up with at least 3 areas of leakage or opportunity and to offer the steps or remedy to deal with those situations.
Terrific. And as you're talking about that, Jason, you're reminding me of step 1, big picture in our 9-step roadmap. You've used different words, but we have the same outcome. And this is where in the big picture, we're asking things like, okay, what changes in the industry or marketplace, sometimes called inflection points or blind spots? What are we missing that can put us out of business? Or what are we missing that if we identify it, we can put ourselves out of business and put ourselves into a bigger, more profitable business? So I really like where you're heading with that. And I'm wondering, when you're speaking with the CEOs, the leaders, the founders, the entrepreneurs, the list goes on and on, are there common mistakes? So is it the 80-20 Pareto's law that, okay, you know what, Jeffrey, when I'm speaking to business owners, these 1, 2, or 3 areas keep on coming up that's holding them back, or they're not even aware of that they're doing, but they should stop doing that? Anything that you can highlight for us?
That's a great question. I would say, I'm just thinking anecdotally. I think one thing I hear a lot is that sales and marketing don't have a symbiotic relationship. And I think that's really important. From my perspective, is I see sales as offering intel to marketing as far as how could they further hone their marketing output. Mm-hmm. And I see marketing as supporting sales to proverbially get their foot in the door there. I too often see them not in a dysfunctional relationship necessarily, but they're just independent of each other, and they're not sort of in a cadence with each other. That's one that comes to mind. I think also, like I said, is sometimes, depending on the size of the business, but the strength of the business is reflective of the strength of the individual or the owner. So in other words, if the owner is really good at product development, but isn't really good at marketing, then there isn't so much focus on marketing, and the company is not doing as well as it could because of that. I would say, this is in my backyard, is just things aren't written down. Yeah. Right. I always ask people, what percentage of your stuff is documented? And it's like usually 20-30%. And the key question I ask is that lottery/bus question, like, who are the key people in your business? You know, Bob, Mary, and Jane. And I said, great, if they all won the lottery or got hit by a bus over the weekend, what would happen to your business? And I understand you can't replace the individual, but you can at least institutionalize that knowledge. And so I just heard so many horror stories. I'll just share one as an example, where it was a software company, and the chief developer unfortunately dropped dead of a heart attack over the weekend. And when they came back on Monday, they could not access the source code. And they literally had to reverse engineer the entire product. And so whether you're in IT or not, it's irrelevant. The question still stands, is if key personnel left your business, and that's to be expected and that's normal, the question is, how does the business even thrive with them gone?
Great questions. And what's interesting, Jason, you can tell me if I'm off base or on base, when you gave 2 terrific insights of where you're seeing that Pareto's law, where perhaps 20% of these issues are causing 80% of the problems. And you said, well, oftentimes the business reflects the personality of the owner. So if the owner is strong in one area and weak in another area, the business reflects that, or sales isn't talking to marketing. When I look at, though, from a high level, I take a step back. To me, it would seem, and to your point, well, we're not communicating. We're probably not having KPIs that are known across the company that we can include in our communications, that we can measure. And we're not likely as a team getting together on that to talk about that. Hey, look what happened this week. We're ahead in this area. What happened? That's terrific. How do we do that consistently? How do we make that better? How am I doing with that? Is that science, fact, fiction? Where are we on that?
Well, you know, it's funny. I just thought of something else that ties to what you just said and the previous question. One of the questions I asked people, and whoever I guess wants a consult, I give you a chance to do some homework beforehand. One of the questions I asked them is, what's your vision? Or do you have a vision? And they say, yes. And I say, what is it? And they say, it's written down somewhere. And I get a little bit in their face at that point. And I say, with all due respect, if you have it written down but can't remember it, it's not a vision. Right. And not only that, but if your employees aren't aware of that vision, and it's not a driving force in their daily life as well as yours, then it's not really a salient vision. And if you have that really clear vision, number one, you're going to encourage growth. Number two, you're going to increase your retention, because employees who are part of that vision and are active and engaged are going to stay.
Terrific. So I like how you're pulling this all together. And speaking of pulling it together, at the start and throughout, again, you've mentioned continuity, you've mentioned scalability. The two don't seem to go hand in hand, but yet for you, they really do. So what are we missing? What's going on there that we should know?
That's a really good question. So you're saying there's a disconnect between continuity and scalability?
Well, if you were to ask me, Jeffrey, you know what, how can I scale a business? What's going to be involved in that? Continuity, at least for me, wouldn't come top of mind. And these are the two areas that you're focusing on. You're making a difference. Businesses are really the benefactors of that. So what's going on with the interplay between continuity and scalability that really has you out there helping companies master these two areas?
I'll get personal for a second. I'm in my 50s and I was only recently diagnosed as being ADD. There seems to be a high propensity of entrepreneurs, business owners, and stuff like that are ADD. And the challenge with a lot of ADD people is shiny balls.
Okay.
Right? In other words, I'm on to the next thing. I haven't even finished the thing I started. And more often than not, just anecdotally, I've seen the success of a company is not just because of the entrepreneurial spirit of that owner, but also having that support staff to make sure they fully execute against that idea and see it through to fruition. And so what I'm saying with continuity is sometimes we're on to the next thing and we haven't even nailed down the foundations. And so if you want to grow, build, stuff like that, you can't take certain things for granted. You have to be certain that you have things locked and loaded in place before you move on to the next thing. You can't start developing product B until product A is fully launched and ready to go, unless you decide not to launch product A. Let me jump to something else for a second.
Sure.
What I like doing with my clients often is I like reverse engineering.
Okay.
I like understanding what is the outcome we're trying to achieve, and then understand where we are now and what are the steps required to achieve that. And so that's where continuity and scalability meet. Scalability is where you want to go. Continuity is where you are now. And if you don't accurately define both of them, then you're going to unnecessarily have challenges in achieving both.
And so, Jason, when we go down that rabbit hole, and clearly we are, it's such an important area. Sometimes as business owners, we just go into the business, we just take things for granted, whether it's really good, really bad. Well, this is just the way that it is. And so for a business that perhaps isn't realizing the full potential of what they could be doing, where they could be going with that, and their normal, it's not such a good normal, but they just think or feel that it's the normal, what are they missing out on? So in other words, when you're not mastering the areas of continuity and scalability, what would be some of the direct effects that we're seeing today? And what's that going to mean a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now?
That's a really good question. And I think it depends. I think it's a good point. If your norm is insanity, then you can't even understand what normal is. And
That's
you just
right.
think that's the way it is.
That's right. Yeah.
And so I guess the first question is, whether it's your relationships, your business, your whatever, you have to ask yourself, is this what I really want? And someone told me a great quasi acronym. Okay. Denial stands for don't even know I'm lying. And so I think a lot of times in various aspects of our life, we are in denial. And so I think the first thing is to really ask yourself, and it's a really hard question, is what do I want? Because it's scary, because sometimes what you want and what you have aren't the same thing.
That's right.
But at least you explore that question and say, what do I want? What could it look like? And then from there, you can build your vision. But all I can say is if you say, I'm fine, everything's fine, and you are living insanity, well, then you're going to perpetuate that.
Sure.
Right? You're never going to get out of that trap of deluding yourself into thinking that insanity is anything but insanity.
And so when we're going through this process, and let's just take a big assumption. I know, Jason, rightly so, you can say, Jeffrey, you know what, it really depends on the business, where they're at, what's going on in their industry, what they want to achieve. And I understand all that. But for a typical business, and we'll take the position that they're not really at the optimal level, when they're going through your process, you're leading the charge, you're working with the leadership, having them master the strategies and the techniques. How long does it typically take to get them from here to the proverbial there, which is really where they want to be, where they're going to be realizing that potential?
That's a great question, and I'll give you a really bad answer.
Okay.
The really bad answer is it depends. And I'll expand upon that bad answer, hopefully make it a less bad answer.
Okay.
So I mentioned that the first thing we do is we offer a complimentary consult.
Right.
If they actually want to engage our services, what we like to do is work with phases and stages with their business. And so the first thing we like to do is we like to establish scope.
Okay.
And what we do is we create what we call a mind map, which is basically an outline of their entire business. The way I like to describe it to people is if we are building eventually a book called Your Company, this is the table of contents. And we map that all out and make sure there's no gaps between areas of focus, roles and responsibilities, tasks, et cetera, et cetera. And the key question we ask them when we think we're finished, we ask them, if we were to not just have this mapped out, but fleshed out and have this in great detail, could you go on vacation for more than 2 weeks and come back and still have a business?
Great question.
And so we keep working at it until we do. But the truth is, it's a very short engagement, and very quickly we give them back basically a map of their company. Mm-hmm. And usually the experience they have is a bit of paradoxical, is they feel overwhelmed and relieved. Mm-hmm. They feel overwhelmed because they weren't aware of all the different moving parts in their business.
Sure.
But they feel a sense of relief because it's not like flies swirling around their head. It's in a frame and I see it. And so that's a very small engagement. If they want to go beyond that with us, what we like to do is we like to prototype.
Okay.
What I have found based on my experience in working with a lot of enterprise and Fortune 500 companies, they tend not to prototype. They launch massive projects and they always have oops moments. They go, oh, if we had just realized this 2 weeks into the project, we could have pivoted and adjusted, but now we're committed and we're in trouble. And so what we like to do as a prototype is to go back to that first conversation where we're giving them a complimentary consult, identify an area that's a low-hanging fruit, such as an area of leakage or an area of opportunity that they're not seizing. And I, too, am a business owner, and what I care about is ROI. Cost, of course, is important, but if you save a lot of money but don't gain anything from it, it's a lot more expensive that something costs a bit more and gives you recurring savings or revenue or something.
Sure.
And so we like to work with our clients to figure out one area that would be right for this, that would be a easy home run for everyone. And we're going to take that prototype, that area, and focus in on that. And once we are happy with that, we'll launch that. And then what we do is we work with our clients area by area as makes sense. So we have some clients where they want the entire business documented. And we've had clients that they said to us, look, nothing personal. You don't have a PhD in chemistry. It's very complicated what our IP is, but our sales and marketing and admin stuff needs a lot of work. Please help us. To give you the short answer, other than it depends, our engagements go anywhere from 1 month to 6 months, depending on how fast they want to work with us and how much they need done.
And what's interesting, though, Jason, as you're talking through this, at Deep Wealth, we combine the art with the science to grow your business for a liquidity event, even for your post-exit life. And wording is really important. The wrong kind of word can create a negative mindset. The right kind of word creates an absolutely positive mindset. And I like how you said prototype. We use a similar word, gets to the same meaning, is a little bit different. We call it an experiment. So we're talking about a prototype, an experiment, as opposed to, well, Jeffrey, you're going to have to make a bet the farm decision on this one. So you're going to go into this. I want you to spend a lot of time and resources. And guess what? If it doesn't work, guess what's going to happen? And I suspect you're finding the same kinds of things. So for our listeners, they're going to be implementing change in their organization. What's the kind of vocabulary and the mindset and the wording that they should be thinking about as they speak to the team to make sure that they're on board, not off board?
I like that term experiment, by the way, because it really promotes curiosity. But as far as vocabulary goes, that's an interesting question. I think to some extent it comes back to vision. I think what's important to realize is that we communicate to our team that we see them in our future. And so the odd time, I face resistance because there's team members who think I'm basically trying to suck their brain and throw them to the curb.
Sure.
And that is not my intention, nor do I really work with businesses who take on that mindset. I think words like vision, growth, future, those kinds of things. I even like the word experiment. And I think we talked about this before, seeing things in a more nuanced way. We definitely have to have metrics, but don't look at it in terms of all or nothing, pass or fail kind of thing.
So terminology, how we're looking at things, short-term, long-term, the tenure, all of that really plays a difference. And I'm wondering, Jason, based on what you've done, where you've been, where you're heading, for a listener who's coming out of our little fireside chat here, you and I today, and whoever else is listening in, if they're going to do one thing, one strategy, one action before they go into the next email or meeting or call from what we've been talking about, what would that one thing be? What could be perhaps a low-hanging fruit, that little effort but huge impact in making a difference?
Based on what we talked about, I'll say two, and I'll just reiterate them. Number one is to nail down that vision and live it. Number two, look at your tasks that you do. And whether it's you carry around a notepad with you or an Excel sheet or on your smartphone, I don't care what, look at each task and put a C or an S beside it for could or should. Okay. Is this something I could do or is this something I should do? And then start to plan your day differently based on what you could versus what you should and delegate accordingly.
Terrific. I love that insight, that strategy. Anyone can do that. It's not time consuming. It's not complicated. It's certainly not expensive, if anything at all. That's terrific. And so, Jason, before we start going into wrap up mode, sadly, as we've been going down these rabbit holes, and this has been a lot of fun, I'm wondering, are there any questions I haven't asked, or are there any topics that we haven't discussed that you'd like to get out there for our community?
That's a good question. Nothing comes to mind.
Okay. Great. Well, I'll take that we've covered the basis on that. Love that. And so let me ask you this then. And I know we'll have all of this in the show notes, and I'll be referring back to that. And again, for our listeners, it's really a point and click. Go to the show notes, everything that we're talking about in terms of getting in touch with Jason and what's out there. You can do that. On your site, Jason, I know you have many resources there. Is there any resource in particular that you'd like to highlight for listeners who want to learn more?
Well, if people don't want to talk to me, we also have an online version of the complimentary consult.
Okay.
So the truth be told, it's not going to go into as much detail because it's just going to go down some standard rabbit holes, but it will still enable you to see some quick answers and not have to talk to me. That's one resource we have there.
Okay, great. And we'll have all that in the show notes. So let's circle back to that in just a moment, but let's put a pause on that because, Jason, you're going to get a second kick at the can with every guest. It's our ritual. I have both the honor and the privilege to ask this question. It's a fun one. I'll set it up for you again and answer it any which way that you like, maybe the same as before or different. You're in the driver's seat. You call the shot. And so if you remember the movie Back to the Future, you have that fabulous DeLorean car that can take you to any point in time. And so, Jason, I want you to now imagine it's tomorrow morning. You look outside your window, and here's the fun part. Not only is the DeLorean car there, but the door is open, it's waiting for you to hop on in, which you do. And now you can go back to any point in time. Jason, as a young child, a teenager, whatever point in time that would be, what are you telling your younger self in terms of life wisdom or life lessons? Or, hey, Jason, do this, but don't do that. What would that sound like?
That's a great question. I think a bunch of things. I would say, number one, don't take yourself so seriously. I would say, number two, don't see failure as failure because longitudinally it becomes success. And I think the one thing I didn't do so much when I was younger and I'm trying to make up for lost time is have mentors and people you learn from.
Okay.
And just be curious and ask lots of questions. And just remain curious because when you remain curious as opposed to knowing, you're not sure and you're open and you're growing as a result.
Terrific insights. That's really wisdom from the trenches. It doesn't get any better than that. And so, Jason, you've mentioned a few times this free consult. I absolutely love that for the community. So if someone does want to have a free consultation with you and really get the ins and outs of where they are, where they could be, how you can help them, where's the best place someone can find you online to get that going?
So we will put that link in the show notes and stuff like that. But you can just book a session with me at clickknowledge.com/booking. And that will give you access to my online calendar. And I should spell Click Knowledge because it's a little bit different. It's click in knowledge, but one word and one K.
Terrific. And for listeners, again, you don't have to remember that. It doesn't get any easier. It's a point and click. It's all in the show notes for you. And so go there and take Jason up on his offer. He's out there working with some of the royalty of business. When you go to his website, you'll see all these logos and it'll be like, wow, Jason's been there and he's really making a difference. And on that note, Jason, what a terrific note to close things out on. It's a wrap. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, your insights. And as we absolutely love to say here at Deep Wealth, Jason, may you continue to thrive and prosper while you remain healthy and safe. Thank you so much.
And thank you, and the same to you.
The Deep Wealth experience was definitely a game changer for me.
This course is one of the best investments you will ever make, because you will get an ROI of 100 times that. Anybody who doesn't go through it will lose millions.
If you don't have time for this program, you'll never have time for a successful liquidity.
I mean, it was the best value of any business course I've ever taken. The money was very well spent.
Compared to when we first began, today I feel better prepared, but in some respects, maybe less prepared, not because of the course, but because the course brought to light so many things that I thought we were on top of that we need to fix.
I 100% believe there's never a great time for a business owner to allocate extra hours into his or her week or day. So it's an investment that will yield results today. I thought I will reap the benefit of this program in 3 to 5 years down the road. But as soon as I stepped forward into the program, my mind changed immediately.
There was so much value in the experience that the time I invested paid back so much for the energy that was expended.
The Deep Wealth experience compared to other programs is the top. What we learned is very practical. Sometimes you learn stuff that is great to learn, but you never use it. The stuff we learned from Deep Wealth experience, I believe is going to benefit us both.
I've done an executive MBA. I've worked for billion-dollar companies before. I've worked for smaller companies before I started my business. I've been running my business successfully now for getting close to a decade. We're on a growth trajectory. Reflecting back on the Deep Wealth, I knew less than 10% what I know now. Maybe close to 1% even.
Hands down, the best program in which I've ever participated. And we've done a lot of different things over the years. We've been in other mastermind groups, gone to many seminars, workshops, conferences, retreats, read books. This was so different. I haven't had an experience that's anything close to this in all the years that we've been at this. It's 5-star, A+.
I would highly recommend it to any super busy business owner out there. And Deep Wealth is an accurate name for it. This program leads to deeper wealth and happier wealth, not just deeper wealth. I don't think there's a dollar value that could be associated with such an experience and knowledge that could be applied today and forever.
Are you leaving millions on the table? Please visit www.deepwealth.com/success to learn more. If you're not on my email list, you'll want to be. Sign up at www.deepwealth.com/podcast. And if you enjoyed this episode, if it added value, if you walked away with some new insights and strategies, please leave a review on your favorite podcast channel. Reviews help us reach new listeners, grow the show, and continue to create content that you'll enjoy. And as we wrap up this episode, as always, please stay healthy and safe.